Hey, what's up, Facebook fam? Joel Lopez here. Don't mind the background. I'm in the basement, aka my office, and that's the last thing to get renovated. So might not be looking pretty for a while. So excuse the background. I had to just get this video out real quick because it's it's going to address the issue that I always find important, that I probably drive my wife nuts over, which is the power of definitions and why they freaking matter when we're having these kind of conversations. But let's just jump right in. Here is Marc Lamont Hill with a police chief or former police chief right here. And I forget what this guy's position is, but no disrespect. I'm not trying to just like glaze over him, but let's see if it has in the show notes. No. Okay. Well, anyways, he's been involved in police enforcement before. But anyways, let's play the clip and see. We're jumping in the middle of it. He is explaining some statistics, and he's going to make a wild comment that Marc Lamont Hill is going to jump all over.
That's got to stop, because I got statistics right here which will prove me right. In New York City alone, okay, blacks are 23%. They make up 75, right, of the population. 75% of all shootings, 70% of all robberies, and 60% of all violent crimes. All right, the whites only 3%. Now, that is why there were more blacks in jail than there are whites. But that's okay. And now let me just finish here, and then you go. All right. So we look at that statistic. All right, they turn it around. The racial demagogues out there turn it around that the blacks are being picked on. It's not. So the facts in these statistics, all right, have to be addressed, and you've got to understand them.
But both can be true, right? Both can be true. You wind up dealing with a community more because of socioeconomics and criminality, but the question still remains, Mark, of how you deal with that community.
Right. Can I respond to Harry?
Please.
Okay.
So first, the guest was smart in trying to diffuse it. He was trying to diffuse it. That even statistically that's true. That could be true. I got to look at the source report to really verify. And even so, given, but we all know that based on social economic factors, you're more prone to criminality when you are raised in poverty. And if we look at the historical reasons why these communities are impoverished to begin with, redlining, and the war on drugs, breaking up the family, you're going to fuck up a community. Like, I just don't get how people just skim over that part of history and just say as if black people were like dropped from an alien planet and they just dropped them down and they were just really, man, their cities are just messed up. Man, black people just need to get their act together. You know what I mean? It's all culture. That's the problem, right? Man, before the war on drugs in the 1940s and 50s, man, the black family was intact. We had fathers in the homes, and you didn't see this just skyrocketed increase in drug usage. And even without education, proper equal education, the family unit was by and large strong, considering the context of those times. Added these other elements that really, again, the war on drugs, redlining, all these benefits that people of color were locked out of, the GI Bills, all those things that African Americans could not benefit from, was just a formula to create ghettos. And then don't forget white flight that occurred when black people started moving in these areas, where it caused the housing value to decrease and drop because a lot of people were moving out, because of the African Americans moving in on certain areas where they could purchase homes. And so it just makes this whole historical context relevant. But of course, to people like this gentleman here, no clue. They just think that it was just perfect, and then all of a sudden, black people just fell off the face of the earth. They just really messed it up somehow. But anyways, I'm going to leave it here and let Marc Lamont Hill finish him off.
I'm coming to you, Jeff. Okay. There's a couple things there. First, Harry talked about the idea of people immediately second guessing the police. The police should be second guessed. They're public servants, and we're the public. We should be second guessing them, just like we should second guess our politicians.
He's saying don't automatically infer an assumption of racism.
And that's a fair point. I mean, I hear it all the time. And why should, I mean, granted, given the history, it's hard not to just go there to say, oh, racist cop. You know, it's hard not to when we know what we know about history and police brutality. And also, have you seen the indictment rates? Like, to get a police indicted and to have them get a guilty verdict, it's astronomical. It's almost near impossible to do that. So when we see that system that looks kind of rigged, and we see it happen again, yeah, we're gonna, emotionally, I'm gonna jump there. Intellectually, of course, you can't, because you have to see the facts and hear the facts and wait till it comes out and then make a judgment if it's racist or not. Unfortunately, there are those who are so close to this issue, some closer than others. That giving them the benefit of the doubt is not a reality. It's not happening. We're just going to go there because, again, what we know about history, about police brutality. So intellectually, on paper, he's right. We shouldn't be just jumping to conclusions. And in fact, when we do, even though in our heart of hearts, we kind of feel like that's the case, that's where the other side, quote unquote, I hate to kind of term it that way, but that's where you see a lot of the conservatives are like so pro cop and pro authority and pro rule of law, in a sense that it's like kind of almost like they can't do any wrong. Those individuals, they get us. They get us when we just jump there. And so anyone who's watching this, if you're trying to make the strongest argument, you can't just jump to racism or racist cops when talking to these individuals, because they are all about evidence, and what you think about evidence is different than what they think of evidence. They think of, literally hardcore evidence as opposed to the implication or context or, the narrative and that kind of thing. It's almost like there's different types of court systems. I know for and it's crazy left field I'm coming out here, but OJ, for example, he was acquitted, from all charges. But then in I think I forgot the name of the court, but other court he was part of, he was tried under a different law system in the state. And that the barrier for guilty plea or to get a guilty verdict was lower. The barrier for getting a guilty verdict is lower. So he was found guilty based on circumstantial evidence. People don't know that. And so people are operating, when we're having these conversations about evidence and this cop was racist, like, they're just like, hey, I'm going to wait and see what the facts say. And then they'll go from there. Other people are like, I just need to know a couple things and I'm good. That's all I need to know. And that's fair. You can do that. But if you do that, you got to be aware that they're going to get you on that and they're going to try to chew you out on that. And actually, it does hurt your argument when you go there. But Mark Lamont Hill says that they didn't do that, but people do that. I've heard it. I've seen it. I read it. People do jump to that in every single case. So that's what he's talking about.
That's what he's. Well, that's not what he said, but and we have to make that distinction, right? We have to make the distinction.
Right.
Should be subject to scrutiny, but so long as police have not been, and because police have not been, sometimes at this point, police are frustrated when you don't take their word as gospel right away. And with camera phone technology, increased witness technology, we see that they're not always telling the truth. Now, to Terry's second point, which is that in Ferguson, we immediately jumped up and said this is racism without any evidence of racism. We did an investigation of the Ferguson Police Department. I talk about this in my new book, and there is considerable evidence of racism in Ferguson. So it isn't true that there was no evidence of racism. There were racist emails, racist phone calls, racist practices.
He's saying in this specific incident.
No,
come on.
Let me finish.
There were 3 emails, I believe, that were racist, correct?
So I haven't looked into it enough to say if it's 3 or if it's more than that. But listen, it could be 2 or 3. It could be 2 or 1. If it's racist, it's racist. Period. I mean, it's funny how it's just like easy to dismiss this. where if this was something about a grown man, an adult officer, 3 emails on being a pedophile, child pornography, just 3 emails. It's just 3. That's systematic. 3 is a problem. It's still, you are the police. You serve and protect us. Yes, 3 is a problem. So I don't know why he's trying to dismiss this. But Marc Lamont goes on.
But Harry, there's only
3
40
emails.
Harry, there's only like 100%.
It doesn't matter.
But
Harry, hold on.
Doesn't matter.
Hold on.
That means it's
Hold on,
systemic.
guys.
Harry stood on national TV and just said that
It's
black people
not
are prone to
systemic.
criminality. I want to be able to respond to that. Okay.
Well, they
Marc Lamont's going at it.
are.
But you think black people are prone to criminality?
The statistics here show
You don't mean to say that. I'm gonna give you a chance to correct me. You don't mean that black people
What
are
does
prone
this
to
say?
criminality.
What does this say?
I don't know what that says,
All right.
but I know.
The most ignorant thing you can do. I'm going to take a whole group of people. This is the problem when we have people go on TV who don't know what the hell they're talking about, especially when they don't know basic statistics. You don't say that people of color or black people are prone to criminality based on one study on a given region. But because he doesn't know what he's talking about, he just points to statistics. This is what it says. Read it. Taking a whole race of people and saying they're prone to criminality because of this one study, because of this one statistics from the NYPD. And because good Lord knows NYPD, they're never wrong.
The chief can back me up because he's coming
He's
right out of
not going to stay on national TV and say black people are prone to criminality.
I am telling you, 75%
I'm
of all
hoping you just don't
shootings
know.
are blacks.
I'm hoping you just don't know.
75% of
So Marc Lamont, in the midst of this rage, he's still. I mean, anyone else would probably would have just went berserk. Marc Lamont is still kind of level 1 berserk right now, and he's still calling it out, and he has to to some degree. I mean, you can't just hear that and be calm. But he's giving him the benefit of the doubt to fix it. You don't really mean that, and I think there's one piece of Marc Lamont Hill that's like, I know he doesn't mean that, but god damn, he needs to fix it, or I need to fix it, because you can't say this stuff on national television. But he still just doubled down.
what you're doing is you're interpreting something else I'm saying.
Harry,
into your narrative. That's what you do.
I'm just trying
Harry,
to talk.
Mark, hold on one second. Hold on.
I think you just don't know
Chief,
prone.
Points I'd like to make. First of all, I'm not
make
going to say
your
we're prone to crime because I don't believe it, and it's not true. That's the
course
first
it's not
thing.
true. It's racist.
The second thing, I have a slight difference.
It is not racist.
Just say that.
So Marc Lamont says the obvious truth that attributing criminality to an entire race of people in this entire country because one study in one region in New York showed that African Americans were statistically more likely to commit crimes is racist. He says it, and he calls it for what it is. He goes and says, no, it's not. He doesn't understand the terms or the qualifiers of what allow us to say, yeah, that's a racist comment.
Black people are prone to
That's
criminality.
not what I said. I said 75%
Now he starts to backtrack.
of the shootings that
Can I
occur in
just-
New York City are done by blacks. All right,
guys.
and you keep on talking about this
Okay, can I-
disproportionate
also-
amount of whites and blacks in
Because
jail.
it is
And this is
disproportionate,
why. No, it's not.
No.
It is, yeah, by the,
All right,
by
guys,
the
seriously,
definition.
seriously.
It is.
How about we don't yell?
That's exactly what I'm going to say.
Okay.
This is a conversation that is not always easy to have. You're going to have clashes of perspective. But we
Kudos
all know
to
this,
him.
all right? If you do not have this conversation the right way, you do not move forward. You can discuss the difference between entire race is prone to criminality, which I know is not what you mean, and that
That's what I was trying to correct.
statistically, I know,
But that's not what I meant.
But the way
There he goes. Oh, that's not what I meant. Once the I mean, be cool. Once the guy understands what he was really saying versus his intent, then he cools back and says, that's not what I meant. And then Mark Lamont Hill says, I know, that's what I was saying. I was trying to help you out there. But you gotta give it to Mark Lamont Hill. He kind of knew that, but he still had to really address that and call it out. And that's what's so dangerous about people not knowing what they're talking about, not knowing statistics, and not knowing basic definitions.
And that's why I said I don't think you meant that.
Right,
Mark,
because that's racist.
I know, but Mark,
Right.
you got to. We need to give people some space right now and need to think about how we're treating.
Yes, but Chris, we're also on national television, and we can't say things like that.
I know, but the way we do it is different.
Look at the numbers, though, Mark.
Can we address those
pay
numbers?
attention to those numbers.
We know
we have to address those numbers.
No, we know the numbers are a function of a disproportionate level of criminality within the population that's represented.
Those numbers are also dishonest because there are other dimensions.
Absolutely,
They're true.
There are other dimensions.
They're not true.
Let's take one.
There are
step
other
at a time.
dimensions.
It's your interpretation, which is wrong.
No, first of all, my interpretation, Harry, Googling some numbers is different than talking to me.
No.
First of all,
I don't Google numbers. This came from the NYPD. These are NYPD numbers.
Oh, well, then
NYPD numbers, huh?
it must be true.
Yeah,
yes, they are.
Well, it must be true.
Because I was in robbery for 4 years.
But how you discuss it matters also. Let me get to the chief.
Okay.
We're going to have lots of conversations on this. It's just the first step.
Just
all
a
right?
point of reference that I'd just like to point out to Harry. One, when you point to these racial demagogues, quote-unquote racial demagogues, one thing that you should take into consideration, a lot of times the media is flocking to a couple of individuals that may or may not be speaking for the African-American community. The second thing is that if you look at that incident that took place in Baltimore, it took a year before that video was released. And you had plenty of officers who did not fire their weapons, but filed reports stating something other than the facts. That's what people are talking about. They're not talking about any specific instances. What they're saying is that government and law enforcement had the opportunity to clean up the injustices that has been taking place in the criminal justice system, the biases and the racism for decades and decades. It has not happened. And those need to be addressed. It does not mean that there are not a lot of good cops. It doesn't mean that law enforcement does not serve all communities well. It means that changes have to be made, talks have to be stopped, and action needs to be taking place. End bottom story. And I think that's the issue that we need to.
Here's another question.
Do you think that police departments are systematically racist?
I think that there's a
Yes or no question. But look how he answers it and look how he responds.
lot of systemic. Well, I'll give you one example.
Systemic. And the true definition of systemic.
I'll answer that question.
It means everybody is.
We know what it means.
I don't know.
That's not what it means.
Boom! There it is. There it is. There it is. Systemic means everybody. Mark Lamont, we know what it means. And then wait a minute, that's not what it means at all. And so this video really is a perfect example of why we need to get on the same page with definitions, because this guy doesn't even know how to talk about this in a way that is going to get anywhere if he just so loose with the lips. If this study in this part of the country says this, it means everybody in the whole country is this way. And then he had to backtrack it because he finally realized how much of a fool he sounded like. And so this issue of systematic racism, it means everybody's racist. That's what it means, right? No, it doesn't. It means there's an implicit bias in the system, in the laws, that naturally slant in the favor of white people and goes against people of color, especially African Americans. That there's nuances, there's policies, there's discretionary decisions that you don't have to prosecute to that degree, but you do anyways because the person's black and it's the end of the day and I'm tired. Versus someone who might be white, but same crime, they get it easy. Slap on the wrist. These things are statistically proven that it's systematic in our criminal justice system and how we police. And this guy thinks it's just everybody needs to be racist with the cap, with the white pillow on their head. Therefore, that's what systematic racism means. Everyone's racist and they're conscious of it, and they know what their power means towards getting, just stick it to the black guy and keep him down. That they're conscious of it. No idea what he's talking about. And let's see how he kind of gets on this one.
It does.
No, it does not, Harry. You can't just make up words and define them. Systemic
You can't make up words and define them. Yeah, you can't do that. Even if you're on TV, buddy.
does not
You
mean
do.
Can I answer?
No, I
Hold on,
don't.
guys.
All the time.
You have to be able to
All
talk to
throughout
each other.
the
I would like
Okay.
to,
Yes, but
Let the chief finish, and then we're going to continue this conversation another time. Go ahead, chief.
I think the intent of the racism that takes place in law enforcement is greatly overstated, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And one point,
The intent of the racism is grossly overestimated. Let's just I'm going to play that back one more time.
of the racism that takes place in law enforcement is greatly overstated, but it doesn't
Greatly
mean that it doesn't
overstated.
exist. And one point example.
Okay, the intent of racism is greatly overstated. Let's set that in. Let's let it sit. The intent of racism is greatly overstated in law enforcement. What does that freaking mean? What does that mean? I'm going to let you kind of, determine what the intent and how far it goes in the police system. But all I say is this. This is why intent matters. It could be first degree murder or third degree murder. It can be a difference of intent. I had a cousin who was locked up because for a long time for an assault, and he got hit hard with the book. Why? Because he was able to demonstrate intent, meaning he covered his tattoos and put a mask on. He wasn't just gingerly walking down the park and say, "Hey, this guy has some nice jewelry, has some money on him. Hey, let's all jump him, guys," and just go. And it was just like, in the intent, I guess even in the legal system, carries weight. So what he's trying to say is that you might have an unconscious bias of Black people. You might not literally hate them. You might not be literally part of your local chapter of the KKK, but you might still have racist tendencies or be programmed based on your education, based on your upbringing, based on the freaking media who like to perpetuate Hollywood, that always dishes out this negative, dark, scary, aggressive, mean image of people of color all the time. You're going to have a knee-jerk reaction to that. And so that doesn't make it any better. It doesn't make it any better. But when we assume the intent was there, is not accurate, we're oversimplifying the conversation to something that's very complex, even psychologically speaking, super complex at a neural level of like how your brain interacts and reacts to pictures and images and those things. So complex, and we oversimplify it, and it's dangerous. And so he's saying that it's there. It could be grossly overestimated, and we got to be conscious of that. But it is still systematic, because you don't have to be conscious of it for it to be systematic and to have the impact that it's having, which is destroying families in our communities. And it's hard to even come back from that with how devastating the damage is.
What I will give you is this, is that in New York City Police Department, which I think would be the most valued company in this world, I'm a big supporter of it. We always stated that we stop people where the crime took place at. So subsequently, you're going to have more stops in African American communities.
Right.
But if you looked at where we did our checkpoints, our vehicle checkpoints, we did them primarily in African American Latino communities.
Right.
Now, is that saying that they drank more than others?
There you go. Perfect example of, they can pick their checkpoints wherever they want. Most of the times it is, in highways and major roadways, but they specifically targeted areas of color.
So what happens is that, and when you present that data, then you say, well, hold on, maybe we are doing things that we're not intentionally aware of. And I think what protesters are saying is, let's all take a look, because there are problems. Problem doesn't mean that you're all bad. It doesn't mean that.
And he's really trying to, bring it home with this idea of intent, and you might be unaware of it, and that's really important to this discussion.
or good. It means that there are problems that have to be taken, and if we sit down and we kill a rhetoric and we have some intelligent conversation, we can make a change for the better for all.
And look,
Well, that's
we know each other very well, Chief. You and I are getting, to know each other.
I could stop it
better
right
now,
here, but
given
I had to
part
show
of our
you Mark
conversation.
Lamont's last response.
We've got to take a breath.
It's not
Even
even-
when something that's
not
said
even
is
words.
completely wrong, we got to deal with each other the right way. I'm not in the business of lecturing you guys. I have you here because I need you here. This is the first step of the conversation we got to keep having. Thank you for starting it today. All right? I know there's a lot more that needs to be said. I do.
Look at Mark
I've lived
Lamont
this for
smile.
a long time as well. But let's just take one step at a time.
Lived
all right?
it, buddy?
Mark's
Thumbs up. He lived it. He lived it too. What does that mean? But yeah, that's it, folks. I'm going to leave it there. Man, we have to understand the definitions. I'll leave you with this. The definition of racism, how do you define it? I want everyone and anyone to define racism, and I want to see what you come up with, because this is what I talk to everyone about, and it's amazing what it means to different people. And when we say, hey, you're a racist, what does that do? What's the implications of that? What's the other person, the other side listening to, hearing it? And how is it going to be interpreted? Yeah, it should be interesting. Thanks so much for staying with me with this long video. Penvisio.org. Check out our Q2 podcast. These are conversations that we have to have, and then that's where you'll actually see more of the action-oriented stuff. So check out penvisio.org. I'll go there real quick, and check out our latest post, or latest podcast rather, with Felipe Luciano. He's actually a former young lord. And man, do we need his words now more than ever. He talks about, New Iberia and how black and brown people need to come together, unite, and start working as one. And great interview. Short and sweet. So you can check it out here, penvisio.org, and click on podcasts. The first one that comes up. Joel Lopez signing off. Catch you guys later.